Well, everyone, let's do something a little weird, a little out of the ordinary. Let's explore my psychological makeup. Now, my psychological makeup has been consistent for many years, and it's something that I haven't really delved into in the way that I could have. You see, I've been writing philosophy for quite a while, in high school especially, and now as well, but mainly I do spiritual practices and explore pieces of myself in other ways. But when I was writing philosophy in high school, I started with poetry in middle school, but when I was writing philosophy in high school, I started to become aware of a part of myself that, how can I say, was uncovered but not really made by me. Now, this part of myself that became, became this certain image. It was buried within my very psyche. It was buried within myself, and I had to uncover it, or him, Archilite. Archilite looks something like this. Now, the more I explored my own mind by writing philosophy and trying to understand how I understand and why people understand and how other people understand, I started to realize that there was a certain influence from my conscience that was playing the majority of the role when I was exploring understanding. Now, this conscience, it will always, the conscience because it will always tell you what the right thing is. Now, deep down, we always know what the right thing is, and I don't want to sound very simplistic. I don't mean the right thing in the sense that, should I support this or that political party? I mean, deep down, you always know what your true tendency is towards. You always know how you're incorrectly acting in the world. Let's give a few examples. First example, let's say somebody is mean to you and then you walk off, or afterwards you're just like, fuck that person. You say that inside your mind. You say that to yourself. Now, the conscience is the piece that will be like, maybe that person was just having a bad day. You really don't know what that person's intentions were, and if their intentions were to hurt you, were to insult you, and to cause you emotional pain, then why would you allow that person to hold power over you? You should instead take what they said as a statement of their own personal insecurity, and decide that anybody who does that to you, especially without purpose, does not hold the power over you to make a decision on what your emotional state would be. Now, you may realize this in much fewer words. The thing about the conscience is that it's not always a dictation, though it often is. Sometimes it's just a feeling that communicates so much more. And that feeling where you feel that little twinge in your heart, where your heart opens up just a little bit, and then you realize it's okay. I'll give another circumstance. Let's say you do something bad. Let's say you steal something from somebody, and when you got away with it. Let's say you got away with it. Your conscience might tell you something like, did you really need what you stole? And if you felt like you needed it, could you not have made the effort to get it some other way besides stealing? Do you want to make this a habit? Do you think that the universe will respond well to you because you've done this? Or do you think that something will be taken from you just as you took from somebody else? And how will you feel when that happens to you? And do you have a right to be frustrated when it does happen to you? Because it probably will. Once again, this can be communicated from your conscience to you, your ego, I guess you could say. The thing being communicated to is, we'll call your ego. The ego is a little bit more complicated, but we'll call it that for the sake of this video. So let's say all that in a feeling is communicated to you, the ego. I found that before I became a more spiritual and a person more interested in going along a path that would lead to greater inner expansion and encouraging that within other people. Before I became that kind of person, I was very cut off from my conscience. And being cut off from your conscience provides a large amount of fear. Now, this fear is is the fear of death, the fear of losing something because you've taken so much. The fear that because you're so attached to the things that you have or the relationships that you have, that you'll lose them. There's extra fear because of that. And there's the fear of the unknown, not knowing where you're going, not knowing who you really are. But when you become in tune with your conscience, fear slowly dissipates over time. I've very little fear in me, especially compared to when I was not such a good person. Now, fear will convince you that it doesn't exist. It will say, it's a kind of another voice. There hasn't been a visual of fear that's revealed itself to me as far as my own psychological makeup. But fear will say something like, oh man, it's going to be a lot harder for you to continue, being a part of this job unless you are, and providing for yourself if you don't suck up to your boss. Or you can't let that person push you around. You have to respond. Otherwise, people think that you're weak and they'll all try to take advantage of you. Or, oh, maybe I shouldn't go to that part of town even though a family member lives there because that's a bad part of town. What if something happens to me? If you live your life where you're ruled by that particular influence, that influence will always lie to you and never lead you down the path to living a full life. Now, let's talk about another part of my psychological makeup, and one that you probably have as well, but it might be a little bit different. Everybody's just a little bit different. But we all have the basic building blocks, and what we do with these building blocks, how we encounter ourselves and use everything that we've been given, our psychological makeup, is very important to how we will exist. So, you can call Archilete the conscience, and I showed a picture of the closest thing I could get to him. Archilete, there's a very particular look, but, and it's very strange because Archilete has always appeared to me as a dark black dude with dreads down to here and sunglasses, but every time that he kind of removes the sunglasses, it's only white light. So I feel like there's a really yin-yang kind of visage active in my own psychology when it comes to Archilites, but it's also the conscience being kind of deep within yourself, kind of in darkness, but being really the source of the light that illuminates yourself. Maybe that has to do with the glasses. Anyway, the other part of myself, my psychological makeup that I want to talk about is the chaos side. Now, this may feel very Freudian. I mean, it may feel like, the conscience I'm describing is the superego, and then talking to the ego, and then what I'm about to describe may feel like the id. But really, what I'm about to talk about is chaos, which isn't exactly the id. And now, the closest picture I can find, I'll put right here, of my chaotic side. And for some reason, I've uncovered that is also my feminine side. Now, we all have a masculine and feminine side. It's not like males or females, and it's not related to sexuality. It's just about your psychological makeup. It can be related to sexuality, but for most people, the male and female parts of themselves isn't really about sexuality. It's more about the kind of person they find themselves to be and what they do with that. And that's really what I'm trying to communicate here. So the other part of myself that I'm going to talk about is the chaotic side, and this is my feminine side. And she also wears sunglasses for some reason, and just regular eyes behind the sunglasses, but she also wears sunglasses. White lady, like I showed in the picture, and brown hair, usually, sometimes black, different states of hairdress or whatever. But she is the influence that grins at the world menacingly. She is the influence that, my chaos is the influence that leans towards self-destruction, and that was very prominent in my youth. Not as prominent now, but still possibility, and still has some influence in my life. Very nihilistic, very pessimistic, but pessimistic to the extent that, the chaotic side believes that really nothing matters, so just have as much fun as you want and don't worry about what anybody else has to say or what anybody else believes you should do. We all have this part of ourselves. I like to call it chaos. I don't have a particular name for her. Arcolite is my conscience, but she doesn't have a particular name. I couldn't uncover one within myself. This may seem very strange, talking about uncovering these things I feel like I made bodies for in my head, but really these qualities were all uncovered. I feel that they were already within my psychological makeup, and I think that you have similar ones within yours. But I often, you know, in the interplay of beings within my head, there's so many different parts of myself that I imagine so many different kinds of exchanges within my mind, and there's at least a town's worth of different pieces or forces in there. Some of them I have given bodies and given, you know, identities in order to make the influences in my brain and the different parts of myself more tangible, easier to understand the root of each thought from. Trying to understand my own thoughts, it's easier to ascribe them to certain forces and give those forces something that I can visualize. But some of them were uncovered, like Arcolite and my chaotic side as well. So in this town, it's more like a city, but in this town, which everyone is me. They don't all look like me, only one, the ego. But I have exchanges with her, my chaos. I'm in love with her, my chaos. I don't listen to her. I don't I don't do everything that she says, and I'm only saying she because that's the chaotic side. My chaotic side and my feminine side are paired, or are one, and that's not true for everybody. That's not true for everybody, but for me it is. And I don't always listen to chaos, and the times that I do, I always feel myself grinning like chaos grins within me. We have to be careful how we respond to chaos, because there is that temptation always within us just to go over the boundary of where we know we shouldn't go. Whether it be in spirituality, going towards dealing with demons, or whether it be in society, stealing something, doing a crime, some crime that you really want to do and think you'll feel good for it. Or just going out and just trying to get as much money as you can, even in the legal system, you know, legally anyway, in the business world. How we respond to the chaos is the kind of person that we often become. Now, many people are so chaotic that they don't realize that they are. I would describe chaos as not the id necessarily as Freud would, but for me anyway, my chaos is more that unwillingness to synchronize with the rest of the universe, an unwillingness to cooperate and be one with all things that I ultimately know I am one with. That resistance to oneness, that resistance to synchronization with all things. That is what chaos is within me. And it is a force I am often fighting. You often see me fighting it, and the best fights that I have are the ones in my videos, because those are the ones that I won. I often don't share the ones that I lose, which are far rarer than they used to be. Now, I would encourage you, even if you don't uncover your psychological makeup in the same way that I have, even if you don't believe that you uncover it, but you ascribe certain visuals to it, even if you believe that, try and pinpoint the different influences that make you think this or that thing, or make this or that decision. Give them a visage, how they look. Give them an identity, a personality, emotions, and see what that force is like when it has an inner exchange with you, the ego. And try to find out what your conscience is like. Try to find out what your chaos is like. And if you don't uncover, and if things aren't, if a body image or a visualization isn't obvious, ascribe, until you can have an exchange within yourself. And you don't have to make negative exchanges with others, trying to work out this very thing that we should work out within first and foremost. If all the bad exchanges in the world, maybe not all of them, but quite a few, if not the vast majority, are us trying to work out things within ourselves, toward ourselves, our own insecurities, our own misunderstandings, our own struggles within, by projecting them without and taking it out on everyone else and making them fight the battles that we're trying to fight within, but we think that because we don't have, most people don't have this inner life with themselves. They think that they can only fight those battles externally, and you find a lot of projection in the world because of that. You find a lot of desynchronization, a lot of inability to collaborate because we fight the battles in the wrong place. Your battlefield, your domain, what you have a right to rule is within the heart and the mind. Make your victories there. Find the pieces of yourself, give them visage, and find out which ones are causing destruction in your life and in your relationships. Find out which ones are helping you. And find a way to always know who your conscience is, or what your conscience is, or if you just want to call it a piece of yourself. Always find a way to maintain a direct link to your conscience, because most people, they don't know when their conscience is talking to them, and it doesn't have to be spiritual at all. They just don't know that part of themselves that is always saying the just thing, because they haven't listened. And a lot of the time we get messages through dreams from our subconscious. Sometimes when we stop dreaming and don't remember our dreams, it's because our subconscious gave up. And there's some other signs to that too. But for the sake of the rest of humanity, find yourself, understand yourself, and move forward with that understanding, and progress in all the ways that you can. Now, this has been a video about my psychological makeup, and I've only listed a couple characters, I guess you could say, and myself, the ego. But I hope that you understand where I'm coming from a little bit more, and perhaps a way that you can address yourself a little bit more and have an inner life that is very vibrant and progressive. I will talk more about my psychological makeup in the future. I got a whole city up here. So I hope that you're looking forward to that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, any interests that I didn't really go into that are connected to this, shoot it down in the comment section below on YouTube. If you like this video, I'll hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. If you want to support me on Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. And $1 a month really helps me out. The more patrons I have, the better. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, and find yourselves.